Welcome to Hey, It's Carly Rae's Book Club. This is Book Hour, where authors will talk their latest novels, reveal their writing process, and walk us through a day in their life when writing. I'm your host, Carly Rae. Today, New York Times bestselling author Juliet Blackwell joins us to chat about her latest book, The Paris Showroom. We'll find out what inspired her to write a story set in World War II, if she had to do a lot of research, and if any of her characters are based on real-life people. We'll find out more right after this. Welcome, Juliet. I'm so excited to have you on Book Hour. Tell us where you're joining us from.
Hi, Carly. It's nice to see you. I'm here from Oakland, California.
And the weather looks good. You're sitting outside?
Actually, I'm inside, but it's like a garden room, sort of. Yeah, and it's a beautiful day. It is. Yeah.
Now, The Paris Showroom is your latest book. Tell viewers more about it.
Yeah, The Paris Showroom. In fact, I just got my books, which is very exciting. So a little show and tell. It's my first purely historical fiction. Always before I've done, I've written a couple of cozy mystery series that are contemporary. And then I've written a number of books based in France that are dual timelines. So they have a contemporary story and a backstory. And this one, as I was thinking about it and developing it, I realized that it was too much of a story to tell in two timelines. So I needed to tell it just in one. So it's my first purely historical fiction, which does require an incredible amount of research. Luckily, I'm very fortunate because my sister is a professor of history in Virginia. So she's a big help to me. She gets me on all the historical stuff because I don't want to make any big gaffes, with the historical.
Yeah.
So the Paris Showroom, it's all about a Nazi prison camp that was actually established within a Paris department store, hence the name, the Paris Showroom. And it was an actual department store. The building still exists. It's now architectural offices, but it's several stories high. And I was just fascinated. I had no idea that Nazis kept prisoners within Paris. I think we all think about people being carted off by train to Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen and all these other horrible places. And a lot of them were, but a lot of people were kept there within the city. And, in terms of the Nazi numbers, it wasn't that many. There were about 795 prisoners kept in this department store. And then there were two much smaller camps as well. And the purpose of these camps in Paris was that I think a lot of people have heard about the Operation Furniture. I don't know if you know that term, but it's when the Nazis were emptying out Jewish homes and businesses and taking the loot back to Germany. But they processed it first. So they would bring it to this department store, and people in the prisoners were forced to sort through and repair and clean all of the items. And what fascinated me most was it wasn't just the valuable items. It was also things like saucepans and children's toys and everything. They took everything from these apartments. They took light fixtures. They took everything. And then they would send trainloads of goods back to Germany, except that they would keep the best stuff, like a lot of the fine china and jewelry and furs and that sort of thing. And the prisoners had to put it out on display in this department store, and the Nazi elite would come through with their wives and girlfriends and choose what they wanted, as if they were in a department store, but everything was free for them, of course. Anyway, so that was when I heard about this, I was so fascinated because I had never heard about it. And I spent a lot of time in France. My boyfriend is French. His friends had never heard of it. The French people I spoke to had never heard of this place. And I just found that really fascinating that it would have existed. It's certainly not the same story as Auschwitz. Nobody was being gassed, and that sort of thing, but it was still a pretty wrenching story.
Yeah. Now, you did mention you had to do a lot of research. So, like, how many months did it take you to, like, learn everything?
I'm always flummoxed by that question a bit because for me, feel like I'm always working on 3 or 4 projects at once. So I'll hear about a story and then I'll start asking questions and then I'll start researching. And then sometimes it takes months to mull over and sometimes years. And I think I first heard about this. I first heard about this camp right before lockdown. So we had planned a trip to France that spring, and it couldn't happen because of the COVID lockdown. And then I thought, well, like a lot of people, I'm like, well, I'll go next year, and check it out. And then, of course, again, next year we couldn't go. I did go back to Paris this last summer, end of summer, early fall, and I was able to see the building, although I wasn't able to go in because of COVID restrictions still. But at least I was able to walk the neighborhood and get a sense. And I was able to touch base with some people who had heard of it and knew a little bit about it. So yeah, I would say it took me probably months of research, but then that's like the basic research. And then there's always going back and figuring out, like, did they have hair dye at that time? And if not, what would they have used? Or I remember one scene when I was going back through copy edits so that the book had already been edited and laid out and everything else. And I was reading back through it. And at one point, the main character hears something on a car radio. And I thought to myself, oh, do they have car radios? Like, I don't know, right? So I had to go look it up. I frantically looked it up because I was going to have to change this, and it was important for the story, so if it didn't work. And then when I went back, I had already been to the website about car radios. So actually, I had looked it up at the time. I just totally forgot it, which is fun. So
Now,
they did have car radios.
So you were right.
Yes. Luckily, yeah.
Now, are any of the characters based on real life people from stories you read about during that time?
Well, the main character, Capucine, she's not Jewish. I'm not Jewish, and I didn't know enough about Judaism to make a character Jewish, I felt like. And actually part of her story is learning about Judaism while she's imprisoned with so many Jewish prisoners. So that was interesting to me. But Capucine is she goes through a lot of the things. I used a lot of historical facts that I learned about the camp and made her, experience those facts, but she's not based on an actual person, if that makes sense. Yeah. But the idea for Capucine actually began very early. I wanted to write about fans, people who make fans. Yeah. And I don't know how I got into this. I got really interested in fans and how they were made and the different kinds of fans. And so I wanted to write about a fan maker. So she did start out as a fan maker. Isn't able to make many fans in the book, but she started out as a fan maker.
Yeah. Now, did you always want to write a book that was set during World War II with a character who was a talented artisan?
Yeah, I did. I did love that idea of because I mean the Nazis are such an odd case, right? They're just so odd because they did have a great love of art. Whether for prestige or money or maybe just a pure love of art, I can't say. But I think it's interesting that they did acknowledge that. And it was true that there was a camp right outside of Paris called Drancy. And that's where they would take people when they were arresting people. The Nazis would take people to Drancy, Parisians, and process them there, and then from there they would send them elsewhere to Auschwitz or other places. And at that point, they were asking people if they had any skills, like artisan skills, and skills like maintaining fur coats, making clocks work, a lot of those sorts of things, jewelry skills. So a lot of the people that were in the Leviton department store had saved themselves by having a skill. So that was interesting too. There were a lot of very skilled people there.
Mm-hmm. Now, how did you come up with the title?
That was mostly my editor. As a matter of fact, it's so funny. I'm so bad at titles, and every time I write a book, I write a page of different title possibilities, and my editor and all of her people never like any of them. So they always come up with my titles ultimately. But I think I think she liked the idea. I think that a showroom is where you put on a show that's not real in a sense. It's kind of a sort of fake presentation, and I think she liked that idea.
Well, there you have it. You heard Juliette talk all things the Paris Showroom. Stay tuned, because when we come back, we'll find out more about Juliette's writing process. Welcome back to Book Hour. I'm your host, CarlyRae, here with author Juliet Blackwell. Now, Juliette, walk us through a day in your life when writing. Do you outline, or do you prefer to write in the afternoon, like have a set schedule?
I actually get up very early. I wrote my first book when my son was still at home and I was running my own business, and the only time I could find to write was very early. So I would get up at like 4 a.m. and write from 4 to 6. I'm not nearly so dedicated anymore, so I don't get up that early, but I do get up, still tend to get up fairly early, because I find that my brain is fresh, and there's the hush of the morning that I find very conducive to writing. So that's when I do most of my creative work, is early in the morning. And then we were just talking about dogs. I have a big dog, and so I usually take him out for a walk in the middle of the day, and then I'll come back and do emails or research or things that are relevant to the book business, but not the creative writing so much. And then sometimes, especially when I'm under deadline, I'll get another creative burst in the evening, like around dinner time or late into the night. But yeah, I can't. If you ask me to do anything creative at 3 in the afternoon, it's not going to happen. I'm just not an afternoon gal that way.
So. Now, did you always want to be an author?
I had a very circuitous route to becoming an author. I started out, I was in school for a long time. I studied anthropology as a graduate student. Then I was a social worker, and then I was an artist. I did murals and faux finishes and that kind of thing. And kind of from there, I went to doing design and project management on renovations. And then I became an author. So I've always wanted to be an author, in the sense that I've always loved reading. And so that's always been something that was near and dear to my heart. But I didn't actually try sitting down and writing a book until I was, I don't know, late 30s probably. So, yeah.
Now, you write mainstream fiction and mystery too. Did you always want to write in different genres?
I started writing mysteries because I love to read mysteries, and it just seemed very accessible, in the sense that I've never taken creative writing classes and that sort of thing. And mysteries, you have a structure, somebody dies and then you have to figure it out. And so there's already like a plot skeleton built in that you can work on. So I think that's why I started with mysteries, and I really love mysteries. So that was quite fun. Those are really, really fun. And then, it was in a conversation with my editor that I was thinking about starting a mystery series that was based in Paris. And she said, well, what if this were a women's fiction? And I don't really like that term, women's fiction. That's probably a subject for another show. But it's a standalone novel that's really about a woman and what happens to her and that sort of thing. And it was really interesting for me as an author, because I didn't have the mystery to keep returning to. So you have to find other ways to propel the story forward. And in the broader sense, of course, all stories are mysteries, because you want to find out what happens, right? It starts in one place and it goes to some other place. But but I think that they just, the standalones allow me to get a lot deeper emotionally. And then I really do enjoy bringing some history in as well. I mean, as I said, this is my only historical, purely historical novel, but in all the others, there is some sort of historical question or mystery or family secret or that sort of thing, which is fun.
Now, when can viewers expect more books from you?
Soon, I hope. I've got 2 that I'm working on right now, actually. One's it's a mother-daughter story based in France, based in where they're helping to reconstruct a castle, which is really fun. And then they discover stuff. It's not a mystery per se, but there's some mysterious elements for sure. And then I'm also doing another standalone paranormal that I think will be really fun. Yeah, that I'm basing here in the California Gold Country in an old spiritualist mansion. So that'll be something new for me.
Now, when you say like paranormal, are we talking like vampires or?
No vampires, but ghostly goings on, I would say. Yeah.
That sounds fun.
Werewolves.
Well, Juliette, thank you so much for joining Book Hour. Before I let you go, tell viewers where they can find you on social media.
I'm at Facebook and Twitter at Juliet Blackwell Author, and also on Instagram. I think it's Juliet Blackwell Author as well. Yeah.
Well, there you have it. Juliette's handles are also in the description below. Juliette, thank you so much for joining Book Hour. And for those watching, I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Carly.